You don't want your employees to be idle, so why would you want your robots to be idle? Zebra Technologies is addressing idle robots by bringing their latest solution to the market, which requires 30% fewer robots, resulting in increased asset utilization and a cost-effective entry to automation for your fulfillment operations. The Zebra Symmetry fulfillment ecosystem is bringing you balanced utilization, more cubic capacity, and optimized pick paths so you can operate at peak performance. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Learn more at zebra.com or click the link in the show notes.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Mark Hasler, who is the Consulting Alliance Director for North America at AutoStore. And I'm going to be joined by Nate Richter, who is the President over at Movu US. And we're going to talk about ASRS systems. And we're going to particularly dive into the ASRS Industry Group that is a part of MHI. We're going to hear what that's all about and what they're up to and what they do for as a resource for the industry, for the end users, for suppliers, OEMs, and everything in between regarding ASRS. And then, of course, we're going to talk about ASRS systems too as well. How could we not, right? So, Mark and Nate, welcome to the show. How are you both?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Definitely happy to get you both on here. Happy to talk about this and learn a little bit more about the group too as well. So I guess let's kick it off here by just telling people, what is the ASRS group all about? And I don't know if Mark or Nate, which one of you wants to take that?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off, Kevin. So the ASRS Industry Group, we really are the lead authority for ASRS solutions in the industry. So it's an environment for ASRS manufacturers and also component suppliers of ASRS solutions to really come together, help promote, our technologies and solutions that we represent as a whole, right? So we do that several ways. There's, producing educational content, whether it's blogs, webinars, speaking sessions at conferences like, ProMat, Modex. And so, we're represented by subject matter experts from those ASRS manufacturers and component suppliers. And it's a place for us to really come together, a kind of a safe harbor environment to discuss, anything that involves our solutions.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Nate?
Yeah, I think we're just a group of the subject matter experts coming from the manufacturing, arm of the industry. And we're really there to educate practitioners and end users on what the technology is, what the new things are from a functionality standpoint, how to apply our technology if it's a fit, and really just it's a full top to bottom educational environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good thing too, to see that, this is one thing I think I like about the industry groups is that's like multiple manufacturers or suppliers, that maybe are competitors in a sense, in a way, but they can kind of come together and be collaborative through these groups and help push the industry forward together as a whole, which I think is a really good thing. So from an ASRS perspective, I guess maybe for people that are not familiar or with ASRS or, maybe don't have familiarity with it, what actually qualifies to be categorized as an ASRS system?
Yeah, in my opinion, Kevin, it's, robotic storage and retrieval systems that really utilize vertical space in a facility and density, usually connected to, some type of software system that's powering that robotic mechanism. The ASRS Industry Group, it's broken down into two sub-segments, two types of technologies and solutions. So the first one is carousels and VLMs. So those are more point of use storage devices, really maximize that horizontal or the vertical space inside the facility. And then we have another sub-segment of what we call RSR, which is robotic storage and retrieval. And that's going to include your pallet load, unit load cranes, mini load cranes. We also are going to have like roaming pallet shuttles included in that, as well as your typical like case or tote handling shuttles and cube storage automation. We differentiate that a little bit from, AMR solutions and things like that, where that maybe don't utilize that vertical tier height and don't have that density of storage, or where those robots can actually travel up into like thick shelving locations.
Yeah, and I think it's been interesting. We've had to readdress kind of what defines an ASRS as new technologies come out, right?
Yeah.
Because pallet shuttles come up. Okay, well, how do I classify that? Because it's not necessarily an AMR. It doesn't really fit that standard or this standard. There's the shelf to person now. There's tote to person now. Mobile ASRS, right? So it's really interesting how we've evolved very quickly, really in just the past 3-4 years of what defines an ASRS.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point there, because it is kind of, this technology continues to evolve, right? And there's newer solutions, people thinking of different ways to make these movements happen and things like that. I mean, how do you go about evaluating that as a group, or just like the MHI industry groups as a whole? Like, the ASRS group, and then there's mobile automation group. Like, do you guys like say like, no, these guys are with us, right? Or no, those guys are with you, right? How do you kind of like evaluate that in a sense when you see something new?
We've had to adopt a little bit. I mentioned the RSR, the Robotic Storage Retrieval Group. That used to be called Fixed Aisle ASRS.
Interesting. Okay.
So we had to change that name with some of the newcomers. Even AutoStore was one, but there's others like and others like Exotech that have these, roaming shuttles that can go outside of the shelving onto the floor. And so, we've had to adapt, and those are decisions we make as a group. We have executive members, which are the actual manufacturers of the ASRS solutions. And we come together through these spring and fall meetings. We hold them twice a year, and we sit down and we talk about it. Who makes sense to be in an ASRS, and what really defines ASRS. And so, some of those previous kind of characteristics that I talked about, which is, density of storage, you have a robotic mechanism that's actually retrieving the loads. So those are some of the things that characterize it. But, we understand that, the industry is evolving, right? And we're always open to welcoming new technologies, emerging technologies that might be a fit.
Interesting.
Yeah, we definitely try to stay ahead of it, but I think technology and all these new creative ideas, nobody wants to be the same, right? So they're always kind of tweaking to kind of, be a tangent off of what's out there already to create interest and differentiation, right? So, we've got a process of application where, we have a couple of criteria there, but then if someone's pushing the envelope, they justify it to us that they should be a member of the group, and we discuss it and normally always are inclusive to expand our view and definition of what it means to be an ASRS member.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to see, some of these newer applications and stuff, it keeps evolving, and, the expansion on what they can do, it's pretty amazing, right? But then from a classification and standardization perspective, certainly a moving target, I would think. So if you look at some of these ASRS systems and what's coming out there, and the different categories of them, and what people are seeing in the market, I mean, as a group, how do you kind of help raise some awareness around, whether somebody already has an ASRS in place or is potentially looking at an ASRS or some type of solution to, maybe better maximize their storage utilization or throughput? I mean, how do you as a group kind of help as a resource to create that awareness around the solutions, and then, help to ensure that they're kind of making the most out of their decision, or just making the right decision in general on the right application?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have you heard of Nucor warehouse systems? Well, they should definitely be on your radar. Forge a connection with the Nucor warehouse systems team at ProMat 2025 and learn about their sustainability, safety, automation, and end-to-end storage solutions in booth S1056. That's booth S1056. And make sure to join us on a panel hosted by Nucor Warehouse Systems on Monday, March 17th at the Sustainability Transportation Theater, where I will be moderating a discussion on the process of recycling steel and how companies can reach sustainability goals within the warehouse. We will see you in Chicago.
Yeah, I think first we need to educate, right? Just to let people know what's out there. As we've discussed already, technology is changing very quickly. So educating them on what technology is out there, try to hone them in on kind of where they're at within their, let's call it the buyer's journey. And because everybody doesn't start from the same point, right? Or have the need to finish at the same point, right? So there's this whole, spectrum between conventional 100% manual to lights out 100% automated, right? And so we have to meet them where they're at in that journey and where their company's taken them. So, we acknowledge that all of our technologies aren't a right fit for every application, right? So it's really how do we help the customer identify what their true needs are and something that's going to work for them, not only today, but then also as they grow in the future.
Yeah, I think, Nate hit it on the head there. Everybody's needs are different, right? And it's all going to come down to, their specific, application, right? And the needs of their operation. And so we try to tackle it from all perspectives. Nate hinted to the ASRS buyer's journey. We're kind of working on a tool right now that is like a self-guided tool that somebody you kind of start at the beginning. And it's, what are you doing in those early stages as a, prospective client of ASRS or a potential end user? You're looking to define, hey, what are my challenges right now? Are we dealing with labor constraints? Are we dealing with space constraints? Are we dealing with error prone picking in our operation? So maybe you're just at that early stage where you're identifying what are my challenges. So we have content on our website that really speaks to that, case studies, written white papers that are resources. And then, farther on in the process, maybe you're trying to gather information, right? Like, what are those questions that we need to be asking internally? What data do I need? What type of data do I need to share with these manufacturers in order to, define what type of solution we need? And then some of them are farther along in the process, right? They have those resources in-house, and maybe they're just wondering who are the manufacturers out there, right? Who are these leading suppliers in the industry? And of course, they can come to the ASRS Industry Group page on MHI's website, find out more information on the actual suppliers. And then we try to take it all the way through to the end. What are those? What's the ROI? What are the benefits? What does your implementation look like and beyond? So we're trying to kind of hit it from all these different angles and provide just education where we can to help support the industry.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing, is that education piece and being able to just, have people understand this, right? Because I imagine there's a lot of people out there that, it's their first time probably, right, approaching an ASRS project and going out there to explore that as a potential solution for them. So I guess in that sense, what are some of like the triggering factors or some of the operational characteristics that kind of lead people to start to look at ASRS? And I guess maybe, in the last year going into the new year here, I mean, what are some of the things that you guys are hearing in the market in terms of what's pushing people towards ASRS?
I mean, a couple things that I hear frequently are lack of labor. Unemployment's at still, 4.2%, something like this, right? So It's not about displacing labor. It's really about finding something to help them push product through their DC and their whole network. We're just simply enabling them for material flow, right? I mean, that's all we're doing. We're storing, and then we're retrieving so that they can ship it out, right? So we're enabling them just to keep operations going and then hopefully growing. But right now, labor is a real hot button topic and constraint for people.
Yeah. What do you hear,
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, labor's top of mind, of course, but I'd say other key considerations are, companies really looking for flexibility and scalability. How can we grow, meet those demands of, next day, 2-day delivery? So we need a flexible solution that can flex with us during peak. So, that's key. I would say, kind of to tie on to the labor standpoint is cost of turnover right now.
Mm.
I don't think enough companies really take that into consideration in their justification. It's the cost for turnover is just gigantic for these companies. I mean, literally turning over 75% of their workforce, every year. And the cost to retrain those employees is extremely expensive. So implementing an ASRS solution can really help with that side of things. It usually leads to better labor retention. Increasing throughput, I'd say is certainly up there as well. So getting more out of what you have, right? A lot of these solutions from our members can cut into ongoing operations. I think brownfield facilities doesn't always have to be a greenfield. So how can we make better use of our existing space? Maybe we're consolidating several facilities. How do we now bring in, another piece of our business into this existing facility where we're already bursting at the seams?
Yeah.
And so how can we do that? Well, we can put in an ASRS solution, really free up a lot of that space. A lot of these, I would say, traditional warehouses are moving closer to the urban areas, right? So as you do that, you want to be closer to your consumer, your cost of real estate goes up. How do I pay that for that cost of real estate while still, meeting these demands of the customer? One way you can do that is by implementing ASRS solutions. So yeah, those are some of the things that certainly jump to mind for me. There's more sustainability initiatives now. We're hearing that more and more from, especially I would say like the C-suite. And so that ESG, of course, is becoming more and more prominent. And, I would say ASRS solutions are definitely can add value to those initiatives.
And there's been a couple of unique trends that I've noticed since the pandemic where, there's a desire to have more physical inventory. People don't want to be caught flat-footed again, right? So they're willing to invest some cash into sitting on some inventory. This could be raw materials at the top end of your supply chain, or it could be finished goods ready to ship out. They're just willing to sit on a little bit more inventory versus being maybe lean, pre-pandemic. So that's interesting. We're seeing 3PLs have some longer contracts that are enabling investments in automation, which is interesting. I haven't seen that as a heavy demand driver, but that's, becoming more and more feasible. I think the ROI model is just changing for them. Again, it could be labor, it could be, longer contracts to where you can enable it. So it's really interesting. And there's now more and more technology that can survive inside of the cold chain, which has always been a weak spot for, globally, really. And so now there's demand drivers there for putting more automation in freezers and coolers.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting insight there. I mean, in terms of, people looking to invest more in the inventory there and coming up with, better, I guess, creative ways to store the inventory a little more efficiently, right? And, take advantage of that, because that certainly was an issue, right? Trying to get certain things during the pandemic, and, businesses don't want to be in that position again. So I'm curious, I mean, what do you see in terms of, we talked a little bit about kind of how, the ASRS solutions themselves, right, are differentiating and, coming out with new looks and versions and form factors and the way to go about things. So, I mean, how do you kind of see the ASRS market kind of continuing to evolve from a technology standpoint? And what do you think, maybe some interesting things that are going on out there in the market?
Yeah, I can jump in there. We had Ruben Scriven, who maybe from Internet Analysis.
Yeah, I know Ruben.
Yeah. He's a great guy, great vision, and he gave us a great rundown on the industry as a whole. But he kind of talked about, and I would agree with him, that the industry is moving towards more modular solutions, right? And so these are solutions that are easy to implement for the client. Faster lead times. This isn't something that's gonna be huge it really could compromise your ongoing operations, right? So having solutions that are easy to cut in, modular, easily expandable, very flexible, over time. I think we'll continue to see more of that, especially on the each picking side. When it comes to pallet movement and stuff, it's, those are fairly big fixed solutions. And I don't know, there are some solutions out there that are becoming more modular. So Nate can probably speak better to that than I can. So maybe, I'll hand it over to him. But we're seeing more modular solutions, at least from my side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing on the unit load side. They don't want to overinvest, yet they're intelligent enough to not underinvest either. They can see the benefit and the value, right, of ASRS. So coming up with a methodical approach to, delivering what I might need this year or even next year, but then something that, let's save some space for that 5-year plan, and then but be ready to pivot then. So things need to be really quick and they're dynamic. So being able to expand the system, whether it's throughput, whether it's volume of storage, both of those are key variables to help expand in the future. At least gives them a lever to pull if things change, right? So throughput's always a topic around peak performance, during seasonal efforts, and so they want to know, okay, well, how can I expand it for that 3-month burst of speed around the holidays, but I don't want to overinvest and just buy something just for peak, right? That's inefficient. So it's a very unique balance that we have to strike with some of these large investments on the CapEx side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that modularity there, I think is a big thing, right? And having that flexibility, because, even like Nate, you mentioned earlier, like a 3PL, for example, right? You look at, some of the larger 3PLs, obviously they're, in a lot of instances, there's only maybe one client in a building, right? Or a couple clients in the building. So it's a little easier to kind of dedicate solutions to them. But then you start to get into mid-market, smaller 3PLs, for them, especially, clients' flexibility and turnover might be greater, right? And seeing that. So they definitely want those solutions that can have that flexibility, right? And allow you to, accommodate more than just one client or one shape or type of product, and be able to reorient that or organize it in a different way if potentially there. So it's pretty interesting to hear there, and definitely shout out to Ruben, I'll say. But what were you gonna say, Nate?
Yeah, so we're actually doing a project right now where it's a unit load project. There's conventional manual racking, there's mobile racking, and there's a fully automated pallet shuttle system, all in the same building.
Interesting,
right? So they are really fine tuning what technology is used for these SKU profiles, and not trying to shoehorn in the bell curve. They're actually slicing the bell curve up, which I thought was super unique solution, right? So why try to shoehorn either the bell curve into your technology or your technology into the bell curve? Let's optimize it, across the way, which I thought was super cool. Not everybody's doing that, but I thought that was a really unique solution.
Yeah, we're seeing that more too, Nate, on our side with the each picking application. We're seeing commingling of technologies, and then there's so there could be an AMR solution located directly next to a cube storage automation solution that is integrated to some type of unique sorter system, right? Could be a T sorter or a pouch sorter. And then there's this kind of orchestration software that kind of is the umbrella over all of it and makes it work, super efficiently together. So we've seen that evolve in recent years, and it's really choosing, the right modular solution for a particular operation. But then it's that software component that kind of brings the fabric of it all together and makes it work as a nice turnkey solution for the end user.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's an important point there too, Mark, on the software side, right? If someone's looking at ASRS options and, how it can fit into their operation and their workflows and what they do, how important is not only to consider the hardware aspect of it, right, which is like the physical system itself, but then also that software on the back end that's going to make it happen and integrate to your WMS or whatever the case may be, or other solutions you have already. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of that and what to consider when looking at that.
Yeah, it's extremely important, the software component of it. Generally most people have some type of WMS in place, right? And we get asked a lot, hey, can we just integrate this ASRS solution directly to our WMS? And it's doable. It's not to say it's not doable, but
I see that pause there. Yeah.
but we really need the resources, right? And it takes time and resources to make that happen. especially with some of the larger companies, Fortune 100 companies. Sometimes they can make that happen across their network. They have those resources. But for more, the average company, I would say you generally going to want some sort of middleware solution in there, right? It's a WES, WCS layer that is, again, like that orchestrator between the two systems. It's making the handshakes between the software that's driving the black box of the ASRS solution and the WMS, and it kind of resides in between and makes that the handshakes between both and controls other upstream and downstream peripheral systems, right? And that is really the key solution. And oftentimes that's not provided by the ASRS manufacturer. That comes from a third party. Maybe it's an integrator that has that subcomponent. But it's critical and something you want to consider early on in your assessment of an ASRS solution. What's going to play nicely with your WMS. So yeah, Nate, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the manufacturers will own the traffic management, some of the machine level, because there's some proprietary things. It's really difficult traffic management that we've figured out. So we shouldn't, pass on those lessons learned in that IP. I think successful software implementations come from really disciplined people that don't let the customizations get in the way of the project. That's where I see things get off the rails. Time and cost, anything can be done, yes, and there are a lot of people that will say yes to that, but the cost of that is delayed deployments, right? Some of these software customizations will take months to deploy. So it's a balance of, is this truly needed for operations? Because the operations, they may ask for the world, right? But what's the implication of that? A lot of our systems can be, scalable and pretty lightweight from a software perspective, but then we start adding, custom screens and functionality, and things can balloon. So I think it's just being disciplined to what your business truly needs and be able to weigh the options of the customization versus a standard out of the, off the shelf solution.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's such a important point there, right? To see like what is the right fit for you in a sense, right? And I think, I appreciate the realness, I guess I'll say there, Mark, on, we can integrate with WMS, but it's a lift, right? In a sense, right? And you need to kind of look at, do you need to add that other layer in there to really kind of make it happen and make it easier for those integrations and things to happen. So very interesting on the ASRS perspective. I mean, how about we talk a little bit about kind of, forward looking, future looking, what does ASRS look like, a few years from now? I mean, we talked about, these different types of solutions and, how to categorize them and, are they ASRS or RSR or whatever the case may be. I mean, as we look kind of a couple years into the future, what do you think like an ASRS system looks like, or, what direction do you think they're heading in?
Well, a lot of the graphs are up and to the right, which is a good thing for everybody, I think.
That's good, yeah.
So, I mean, I think whatever we say, it was like 7% compound annual growth rate globally, right? I think different markets will grow faster than others based on a lot of different variables. I think, 50% of that growth is going to come out of Asia. But it'll be from a technology standpoint, I think costs will continue to drop, right? That happens with any new emerging technology. So you'll be able to get bigger, faster, potentially quicker for cheaper, over time, right? So that's the general trend that we will all see, which makes it more accessible. So then the customers that couldn't necessarily afford it, or the ROI wasn't quite there, the projects will begin to pick up in their DCs, which will continue to drive growth. So which will then spur more larger projects potentially, and then there could always be the big Amazon boom where they come in and they're sweeping trends there that they are driving kind of single-handedly. But I mean, eventually, will there be, humanoids zipping around this thing, lights out warehouse? Yeah, probably someday, right? So between now and then, there's a lot of work to do and a lot of different technologies to help us deliver as an industry group to the general public to solve these automation problems.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's spot on, Nate. And I just think, a lot of those repetitive tasks that we see, inside the warehouse are going to shift towards an automated solution, right? It just makes sense. And, I don't want to put my generation down, but millennials don't particularly like walking miles and miles a day in a warehouse, lifting heavy boxes all day long, right? they would rather work with a robot, right? And we even see like temp labor who's had experience working with automation. They go, oh, I want to work over there because I like working with the robots. And that we're going to continue to see that shift towards just automating those repetitive tasks. I think that makes sense, and that's generally where those solutions start to kind of take seed. I'm trying to think what else I would add as far as the future of ASRS. High throughput. I would say some projects maybe in the past that were thought that couldn't be done by ASRS because it was just too large. That is now changing rapidly. ASRS is becoming faster and faster, whether it's moving pallets, moving cases, totes, bins. It's all becoming faster and faster. And so I would just stress anybody that thinks maybe my throughput is too high. We ship out too many orders a day, and it can only be done by human labor. That's not the case anymore. So, those multi-level pick modules, 3-level pick mods with pick and pass, and those are kind of going the way of, the horse and buggy.
And I think something else that is also interesting, there could be, other automation, technologies that come out, automated truck loading, or maybe, each picking robots. If they can get to a certain point of adoption, then it could change the inputs to us as the ASRS supplier, right? I mean, if we don't need pallets anymore because we're automatically loading totes or cartons inside of trucks, then the demand for Uniload could go down. And I'm just speculating, but I mean, some of these other technologies within the warehouse could affect what's truly needed from a storage perspective. So who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah, very interesting perspectives there, and insights too as well. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see that, and I think that's a great point there, Nate, at the end about kind of some of those external factors too as well. Like, how does that drive just how we operate differently, whether it's in the supply chain as a whole or just within the warehouse distribution fulfillment side. It's on its own, right? But I think it's overall, there's still a lot of room, right, to grow and be able to leverage technology like this to continue to improve operations and address a lot of those challenges. I know, Mark, you mentioned millennials there and not wanting to do that, but forget about millennials. I mean, Gen Z, forget it. Like, there's no way, right? So I mean, it's there's just a matter of time before we have to without a doubt, start to embrace a lot of this technology and start to bring it into warehouses. So very interesting talking to you both here today and learning more about the ASRS group as well as what's going on within the market. If people are interested in learning more about the ASRS group and leveraging some of the resources that you guys have out there, what's the best way to find that and I guess get in touch or learn more?
Yeah, you can visit mhi.org. We have our site there under the industry group tabs. You can select that and you'll see the ASRS industry group there. And you can go to our website. You can submit requests if you have interest in exploring potential application, and we can pick the right members from our group to address your questions. And there's a ton of great resources there. So I would just suggest going on the mhi.org website and going to our subpage.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, I'd also recommend that we sponsor a couple different seminars during the large trade shows like ProMat and Modex, right? So be sure to attend those. Show up early. I think all each of them are standing room only, right? So we bring in panels and practitioners to discuss the technology and how to apply it. So it really is focused for the end users to be able to take something away from the trade show that they've learned and use it in their own business. So I think that's probably something if you're at those trade shows, and look up the member directory, visit them in the trade show booths, talk to them specifically. We love that when people come and ask us about the technology.
All right, great. I'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the podcast and video show notes here so people can easily access it and learn more. So Mark and Nate, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
enjoyed this episode, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the new warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.